Welcome back, everybody, to another live episode of the DCL Duo podcast brought to you by My Path Unwinding Travel. And Sam, we're not straying too far from home today, are we?
We are not. We're just going to head across Lake Washington. We live on the east side. For those who are in the know, east side means on the east side of Lake Washington, over into the city of Seattle proper today on our show. So super exciting. Let's welcome our guest who's with us, Ashley. Welcome to the show, or welcome back to the show, I should say.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone.
Yeah, it's so great to have you. We know you're usually watching our live show, and we appreciate that, and we're so happy to have you on. For those who haven't listened to some of our shows in our back catalog, Ashley came on our show, gosh, it's now a couple years ago, to talk about Alaska sailing on the Wonder. And in that show, we covered only a little bit of her pre-cruise trip, because she went to first Seattle and then to Vancouver, British Columbia, where she obviously sailed out of on Disney Cruise Line. Today, we're going to focus on talking about Seattle. Of course, we know Disney Cruise Line does not actually sail directly out of Seattle, even though pretty much every other cruise line sails out of Seattle to go up to Alaska. But you know, it's our hometown, and a lot of people do like to make a stopover here in Seattle before they head up to Vancouver and start their sailing on Disney Cruise Line to Alaska. It's only a 3-hour drive, folks. So that's what I like to tell people. We're 3 hours south of Vancouver, British Columbia. But before we dive into that topic of the show, we should have Ashley remind folks of her cruising background, you know, how many times you've sailed on DCL, Ashley, what kinds of itineraries you've done, that sort of a thing.
Sure. So I've done 8 cruises. I'm getting very close to platinum. But I've done your typical 3 and 4 nighters out of Port Canaveral, the Alaska cruise in 2022, which was just a bucket list trip. And also out of New Orleans, where we first met you,
That's
to
right.
Mexico and back, and New York. I really wish DCL would go back to New York, because New York to Canada is just a fantastic way to sail in the fall.
You're like alternative DCL port guru. That's what you are.
Yes.
Like you need Galveston and San Diego on the roster to just complete out the the non standard ports for DCL in the U.S.
Non-standard. I have another one booked out of Southampton for next summer too.
There you
go
go.
to Spain.
There you go.
Awesome.
All right, well, we got a few folks saying hello here, Sam, that I want to make sure to acknowledge. So Tinfoil Mouse Ears, CT, hey, how you doing? We got Matt, good evening, here we go. Kraus Mouse Adventures saying good evening to everyone, and Jill saying hello all. So
Hi,
thanks for
everyone.
joining the stream. It's great to have you all here. All right, let's dive into talking about why you would even want to fly to Seattle instead of Vancouver. Like, you know, no one. Well, I guess a few people fly to Orlando and then cruise out of Miami, but you know, it's more common. You fly into the city that you're sailing out of. You don't fly into a different city. So, Ashley, why did you choose to fly into Seattle as opposed to flying to Vancouver for your Disney cruise?
Sure. So we had 2 reasons. The first one is we absolutely love Seattle. So we wanted to show it off to our daughter. I spent some time back in the late 90s in Seattle, and it's just a beautiful area of the country. And then also we liked the direct flight from our East Coast cities of Charlotte and Atlanta, because this was a multi-generational trip. And so we had one direct flight to Seattle. We were already on the West Coast. And back during the 2020 season, there was also a lot of border crossing restrictions. And so then it just made a lot more sense to be able to drive across the border instead of being able, if we caught COVID on the ship, being kind of stuck in Canada before quarantined in Canada before flying home. So it just made logistical sense. Plus, we love that area of the country.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'll also say that if you're coming out this far for Alaska and you haven't visited the Pacific Northwest, like Seattle, Portland, great cities to visit. And you're coming during Alaska season, you're pretty much coming at the best time of year. So for those of you who don't live in Seattle, you may have heard it rains a little bit here. I guess
just a little.
You know, all to the contrary with the background behind me, that is an actual view out the window where I sit and work.
That's our backyard. Yeah.
That's our backyard. But it does rain a lot here. But we pay that price because during the summertime, it is absolutely gorgeous in the Pacific Northwest. Everything is green. All the evergreens are blooming. Not a cloud in the sky on many, many a day. Mild temperatures most of the time. And just lots of stuff. It is an outdoor community when we hit the summertime. And when I say that, I don't mean everyone's off hiking. Lots of people are. But lots of people just go to parks and picnic and sit around and just get outside to soak up the vitamin D because we have to take supplements the rest of the year. So it's a great place to visit, and it's a world-class city here in Seattle. Not to knock Vancouver. We love to go visit Vancouver too. So my recommendation is actually come fly here, head up to Vancouver even for a couple days, then do your cruise and, repeat the on the other end to go home. So
that's what we did. It was great. So I could hit both cities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Ashley, Sam and I are going to preface, we're going to talk about where to stay. Sam and I are just going to offer suggestions on neighborhoods. We live here, so we don't stay in hotels. Although we've stayed here and there a few nights at different hotels around the area. But Ashley, you have experience with a particular hotel. Would you recommend it, and where was it?
Yeah, absolutely. It was on Western Avenue. So it is walking distance to the Space Needle and Seattle Center, that park. It's walking distance to the waterfront, so that you can go see all great food and a running trail along the river, and you can see the water because it's a bit up on a hill. And so that was in Western Avenue, and it was the Homewood Suites because we had a larger group. We wanted a little more space. But also we were spending the big bucks in Vancouver at the Port Hotel there. So it worked out great for all the families.
Yeah,
Great.
that's perfect spot. So where Ashley stayed is in the Belltown neighborhood of Seattle, which is basically the neighborhood that's directly adjacent to downtown. And it's also really close to, or really where the port is if you're sailing out of the downtown port. I want to be clear, there are two ports that cruise ships sail out of in Seattle. So if you're cruising out of Seattle on a different line instead of cruising out of Vancouver, that's a great place to, Belltown is a great neighborhood to stay. Or another neighborhood right next to that, which is sort of one more neighborhood removed from downtown, is called South Lake Union. I would say that's better if you are, well, it's a great neighborhood too, but it's also better if you're sailing out of the other port that is on what's called Interbay, which is a little bit outside of the downtown corridor. You'd have to take an Uber. Yeah. Our friends Drew and Haley actually sailed on Holland America Cruise Line out of Seattle, and they were sailing out of that port, and so they stayed in South Lake Union. So I think either is a great neighborhood to stay in. Lots of restaurants. Both of them are walking distance to most of the attractions in Seattle, both the waterfront as well as the Space Needle. And of course, lots of museums in that area, which we'll talk about, places to go while you're visiting Seattle, and even a great park we'll talk about that I know Ashley went with her family.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think you've hit some great places to stay. If you're ever sailing directly out of Seattle from the downtown port, there are hotels that are like right across the street. You can walk your luggage across the street. But if you're sailing out of that Interbay port, you're going to need a car. You're going to need some way to get there. It is not a walkable experience from the core downtown area. As far as where to stay, I do want to be upfront with people about my own city and say I would not encourage folks to stay in the downtown core of Seattle right now. Post-COVID, like lots of West Coast cities, we have had a huge uptick in homelessness that has led to some not great interactions for visitors and guests in the core downtown area.
Yeah, particularly in the Pioneer Square neighborhood, which is where basically I work.
It's not that you can't get into downtown to go to a restaurant or something. It's just, I would not encourage you to stay in that area. I think South Lake Union is great. I think Belltown is great. I'd go so far as to say if there's anything on the lower Queen Anne area, that's great. All of that is central. Tons of restaurants, tons of things to do, tons of walkability in those areas, all great. If you're looking at hotels for whatever reason in Bellevue, which is the city on the east side, you can actually see the two cities both have high-rise skyscrapers, and you can kind of see them across the lake. Just know, there's stuff to do over there, but it is not Seattle. It is much more
suburban.
It's suburban. There is a downtown core, great restaurants, a big shopping mall, that sort of stuff. But I would not advocate staying there. You'll be spending half your time driving back and forth across bridges or toll bridges to get into the downtown area.
Although you'll be real close to where we live. So if that's an
Yeah.
attraction, then,
It is not, no maps to the house are being sold. All right. So we talked about a little bit about where to stay. I want to talk about what to do in Seattle. And we're just going to pass the mic around and everyone scratch some things off their card as we go. And we'll get into some deep cuts the further we get into this. But there is a ton to do in Seattle. Ashley, as an actual tourist to the city, like, what was the first thing that you decided we have to go see this?
It's the waterfront. I mean, you have to go to Pike Place Market and then the big Ferris wheel, the Great Wheel that's down there. And we were with grandparents and at the time a 7-year-old kid. So all of my recommendations are good for really any age group. But going down to the waterfront, smelling the the Seattle has a very distinct smell that brings back great memories for me. That salty water with the pine air, looking at the jellyfish. So making sure to get to the waterfront. And Pike Place Market, you've seen it in all the movies. You catch the fish, and at that time of the year, that's your afternoon. That's your lunch. You walk through and you eat little bites through all the different stalls. You grab a bottle of wine to have later. Obviously, the original Starbucks is right there. And then the biggest tourist attraction in all of Seattle, the infamous gum wall, chewing gum wall. You got to make sure and walk through the market to find that, because every kid finds it fascinating. But really, just that exploring right on the waterfront too.
So yeah. I do want to highlight Pike Place Market. Great restaurants in there, great food stalls in there, great place to find souvenirs. It is an active, like, sort of greengrocer market. They have multiple fishmongers in there, including the one that's famous for throwing the fish. They've got butchers, cheesemongers, flower stands, produce, fresh produce, handicrafts. There's one really long strip that you can walk down. There's some different floors and levels you can kind of get lost in and find, like, little magic shops and curio shops and things like that. Old bookstores. Yeah. It's where the scene from Sleepless in Seattle was filmed, where Rob Reiner and Tom Hanks are eating at a Greek diner. It was in Pike Place Market. It is a hub not just for tourists. Like, locals go to the market too. We used to go over there all the time to get fresh cracked crab that we could just bring home in a bag and pour in a bowl and eat. It was great. So as a tourist destination, it's also a place that, at least some of the locals still go. You can access the actual waterfront proper from Pike Place Market. They have stairs that go down and will meander you down to the waterfront area. I'll highlight that piece of it, which is down on the waterfront. There are some piers, and the piers are a great place to go wander around. There's some great attractions down there and some decent restaurants, especially sort of family-friendly restaurants. So on the restaurant side, we'll do more food reviews later, but on the restaurant side, if you're down there, Ivar's is down there, which is a local fish and chips favorite.
And Elliott's as well next
Elliott's, which is another good local fish place. There's a Red Robin down there, which is a burger chain here locally. It's a sit-down burger chain here locally that started in Seattle, and people love it. There's the Great Wheel, or the Big Wheel, down on the pier, which is like, it's like a London Eye, only smaller, but great views of the sound.
Right, yes. It doesn't. That's true.
Yeah.
And then Wings Over Washington is a great attraction right next to the Great Wheel. So it is basically soaring over Seattle. It is not, they can't call it
over Washington.
Or soaring over
Washington.
Yeah. But it is really, it is a soaring-like attraction called Wings Over Washington. And it's one of those things where you can actually purchase tickets to do both the Great Wheel and the Wings Over Washington, or individual tickets for one or the other. Or you can buy, I think it's like a city pass or something like that gets you entrance into those attractions and some other museums and attractions throughout Seattle. But great stuff on the waterfront. What's also down on the waterfront I want to add is the aquarium. So Seattle has a fantastic aquarium. If you're into sea otters and river otters in particular, they're adorable, and they hold hands and they swim together and they sleep while they're holding hands, and it's the cutest thing ever. But yeah, it's another, while we're talking about the waterfront, I feel like that's another great place to visit in Seattle that is in that exact same area as what we've been talking about. Yeah.
And I want to highlight, so we talked about the original Starbucks. I just want to be clear, like it isn't just a Starbucks store, all right? But you can buy some special mugs and things in there. It is the only large chain that is allowed to be in the market because it didn't start as a large chain. It was a local coffee shop that then took off and became the global brand we all know today. They have a different logo out front. They have the original mermaid logo, which is a little racier than the existing logo that they have. And they sell mugs and stuff that have the original logo on it as a part of their collection. It's typically busy, but it's fun to see. I'll also highlight one more food recommend. I know we said we save food to the end, but I can't. We're at the market. The
You
food
can't,
stalls
Brian.
are the food
Yeah.
stalls are fantastic. But if you're at the market and you're near the Starbucks and you're looking for something tasty as a snack, head across the street to Beecher's. The Beecher's cheese is made here locally. They make fabulous, like these sharp cheddars, aged cheddar cheeses, and they make Beecher's mac and cheese, which is phenomenal. So
Yeah.
I highly recommend trying that out. Yeah.
And I will say, we've got Matthew asking if we have Tim Hortons in the area. We have Starbucks. Just he needs his Timmy's. I'm sorry, you have to go across the border to Canada for Tim Hortons. There are no Tim Hortons that I know of in Washington. There are certainly none in Seattle. But we have so many amazing, wonderful coffee shops that you do not need a Tim Hortons. There are, and I'm not talking Starbucks. Starbucks is fine and great, and going to the original Starbucks is, it's that's a destination.
I'll just say, if you're a coffee
Yeah.
fan and you got a car, then reach out to us on our email, dclduo@gmail.com. We'll give you some just really great coffee recommendations. Once you have coffee from some of these places, you will be like, I can't go back. I can't go back.
And there are so many good coffee places, both in downtown and outside of sort of downtown corridor in Seattle, so that we can give you you can do a taste test of Seattle
Matt,
coffees.
100% agree. There is no mac and cheese that can. It's got to be pretty bad.
And he says coffee is life in his next comment
Yes.
as well. So
Yes.
yes, coffee is life, at
And
least in Seattle.
I see a lot of you are giving some recommendations around restaurants and things to eat. I will definitely bring those up as we get more toward that point in the show. But let's take a hop, skip, and a jump away from Pike Place Market and over to Seattle Center, because that is a huge destination, not just for tourists, but also for locals, and has a lot of great things going on over there, completely walkable from the downtown area and the downtown hotels. If you want a little bit of fun, you can head to one of the local malls, the name of which is escaping me, and ride the monorail from the mall.
The Westlake Center, Brian.
Westlake Center Mall. You can ride the
With
monorail
the original
over.
Nordstrom. The
With the
original
Yes.
Nordstrom is there. Yes.
Yes, you can ride the monorail from Westlake Center out to Seattle Center. The monorail has two stops: Westlake Center and Seattle Center, and that is it. So
Yeah,
if you
and
are a
it's-
fan of if you're a fan of The Simpsons, we got sold a monorail. So
Right.
there you go.
And it's maybe a quarter of a mile or half of a mile, so you can totally walk it. You don't need to take the monorail. If you want to take the monorail, you're doing it because it's a tourist
If you want to
attraction.
really upset someone from Seattle, talk to them about the monorail a little bit, because let's just say I'm probably still paying taxes on a monorail I never built. So yeah.
Anyway, Ashley,
yeah.
what did you do at Seattle Center? We know you went there. Tell people what's at Seattle Center.
Yes. Well, I reached out to my favorite Seattle folks at the DCL Duo and asked for a recommendation for a playground, because we knew that we needed to stretch our legs after that long cross country flight. So we went to the Artist at Play Playground, and it was even that perfect Seattle drizzly weather. And it's like no other playground I've ever seen in terms of the climbing structures and the musical instruments that are really large that you can play, and the interesting swings. And it was just fantastic. Slides that the adults went down, and it was fantastic, really pretty, large. You could also throw a frisbee or a football or something. It was great. Also, you've got the Space Needle there. If you can see Mount Rainier, if it's not a cloudy day, if it's nice and clear, you can do the Space Needle. I'll put a shout out for the Pacific Northwest Ballet that's also there in Seattle Center.
Yes.
If they or the symphony are playing, it's lovely. And then the Chihuly exhibit, which we didn't have time to go in, but I love the Chihuly Gardens. So all of that is fantastic, and you can get a New York style street hot dog. So if that's your food jam,
I love
Well, if you
it.
really
It's there
if you
for
really
you.
want if you really want a local hot dog, you gotta get a Seattle hot dog, which has cream cheese on it. So
Yes.
that's.
I
But
know it's weird.
for those who don't know, I just want to briefly. Dale Chihuly is a very famous glass artist now globally, but originated in the Pacific Northwest. He's got a lot of glass blowing and making facilities up here. He's very well known up here. If you don't think you know what his art is in Palo, on the Dream and the Fantasy, I believe, as you walk in, there is a glass installation on the roof, and that is, if it's not Chihuly glass, it's in the style of Dale Chihuly's glass. So it is beautiful, beautiful stuff. And he built a permanent exhibition of his work, and and have some rotating exhibitions as well at Seattle Center. It is well worth walking through and seeing that. It is right next to the Space Needle. You don't have to venture very far. I'm actually going to put a plug in for the Space Needle. I think a lot of people see that stuff and they're like, that's a tourist trap. It is, but we've been up it and we enjoyed it. And they actually remodeled the Space Needle. It used to have a rotating restaurant, which it still kind of does.
It's more of a bar.
The best value used to be go up to the Space Needle for like lunch, and you get the ride up for the value of your meal. So at least you're getting kind of the meal and
they
the
don't do
view,
that
and you could go to the
anymore.
observation deck. Now it's more of a bar, rotating bar. But what they did is they replaced all of the flooring and like everything in the Space Needle, so it's all glass now. So when you're up in the Space Needle, you can stare straight down below you, and the thing still rotates. It's really fun to see.
Well,
It's a great way. Yeah.
And that's inside. You can also go outside. And of
Yes.
course, they have like tall like walls so you won't fall over or anything like that. But you can go outside and actually get great views as well. But as Ashley mentioned, this might not be something you want to book ahead of time because you don't know if it's going to be a clear day in Seattle. If it's a cloudy day, you're not going to get these beautiful views of either the city skyline or of Mount Rainier. If it is a clear day, you will get, we always say the mountain's out today, right? When we see Rainier, that's the mountain is out every day, but we can't always see it. So we say the mountain is out when we can see Rainier. And there are some days that will be fantastic. The one issue is it's possible that it could be sold out with pre-reservation, so there is some risk there.
If it's a really warm day, if you're coming up later in the season, it's a warm day. Seattle Center is also a great place to go because it has a gigantic fountain, and people just put bathing suits on and they go into it's meant to be kind of, it's like not a fountain, it's more like a splash area, but like on steroids. Like it shoots a column of water up like 20, 30, 40 feet in the air, and then it comes splashes down on everybody. It's a great spot to go if you're looking to cool off, and huge grass areas. There's a spot over there called the Armory that has a ton of food. One of our cool local radio stations has a whole setup over there. They're known for discovering lots of grunge music acts and things back in the 90s, and are really, really popular. KEXP. You can like walk by and look right into the studio as they're broadcasting. So there's a lot to do around Seattle Center that is, it will keep you busy for a day if you just want to have kind of a fun, relaxing little, day over there.
I want to give two more recommendations for Seattle Center specifically, which are, there are two great museums in Seattle Center. One is the Seattle Children's Museum. So if you're going with young kids, that's a great place to hit. If you're not going with young kids and you're into pop culture, sci-fi, music, whatever, there is the MoPop Museum, which is the Museum of Popular Culture. It's formerly I forget what it was, it was formerly like a music museum, basically.
It was the EMP, the Experience Music Project, and the Sci-Fi Museum. This will blow your mind. It is Paul Allen's personal collection of music and sci-fi memorabilia. Like, he owned Captain Kirk's chair. He owned all of his guitars from famous musicians. So he installed it in a building as a permanent set of exhibitions. Paul Allen was the co-founder of Microsoft, for those who don't know. And the building itself is really interesting to look at. It's supposed to look like a smashed guitar. That was the architectural theme for the building.
Yeah.
So it's really,
so now
really
it's
cool.
the MoPop, or Museum of Popular Culture, and that it's right there in Seattle Center, right exactly where we're talking about. So there's multiple things to see in that one area between Chihuly, the Children's Museum, the Space Needle, the Artists at Play Playground, which I'm a huge fan of myself. There's just a lot to do right there. And then a hop, skip, and a jump away, We've got to talk about the Pacific Science Center, because that is
Yeah.
another fantastic museum for both adults, kids, and the young ones. There's a really nice little, toddler exhibit. There's a butterfly room. We have a great science center.
There's an
in
IMAX
Seattle.
there. They have a full IMAX. I think they have a planetarium over there too.
Yes.
And then they've got a butterfly house. They've got all kinds of installations for various engineering things, robotics. We used to take our son there almost every other weekend. We were members and just let him run around and have a great time. So the Pacific Science Center, highly, highly, highly recommend. There's also a bunch of, at Seattle Center, there's a bunch of, Ashley mentioned the ballet. There's children's theaters and other theaters over there. The old Key Arena is over there that sometimes hosts some smaller concerts. Roller Derby, I think they host there.
Now it's
Yeah.
the Climate Pledge
Oh,
Arena.
the Climate Pledge Arena, yes.
Brian,
I will always remember it the Key Arena. So
well,
yes.
and now they are the home of the Seattle Kraken and the Seattle Storm, right?
Oh,
So the
that's
Seattle
right,
Kraken
yes.
is our hockey team, and the Seattle Storm is our women's basketball team. So we have the WNBA. We still don't have our Sonics back. We will someday have our Sonics back.
Yep.
Okay, I'm putting it out there.
And
I'm
then-
Go
manifesting
sports.
it. Go.
Go
Go
sports.
I hear the
sports
home
and
team
ballet.
rousted the visiting team.
Yeah.
And then so let's take one more hop, skip, and a jump because after that we got to get in the car, I think.
Well, I
but
think we still need to get to Mohi, Brian.
that's
We
where I
haven't-
was headed with my hop, skip, and a
perfect.
jump to South
Okay.
Lake Union. So South Lake Union, Seattle is a tricky city for transportation because we have tons and tons and tons of water. So we've got the Puget
Everywhere.
Sound, we've got Lake Union, Lake Washington, which is a massive lake. Calling it a lake is almost comical. It's huge. And so over on Lake Union, which is on the downtown west side of the downtown west side. We're on the east side. It's on the west side, Seattle side. On the south end of Lake Union, they've got the float planes coming in and out, which is really fun to see. Again, it's a hub of activity for locals in the area with small boats and watercraft. Tons of floating homes over there, including the one that was used in Sleepless in Seattle. And at the very south end, there's the MOHI, which is the Museum of History and
Industry.
Yeah.
Yes.
Our son just took a field trip there, had a fabulous time, loved it. Matthew, I see your question about boat tours. Yes, there are pleasure cruise, dinner tours, sunset sails out on the Puget Sound.
Yes.
Yeah, on South Lake Union, there's kayaks you can rent. There's Duffy boats, electric boats that you can rent with a small group and just tool around the lakes. And then there are actually now floating hot tubs that you can rent. And if you want to sit in a hot tub and float around Lake Union, you can.
If you're looking for a boat tour on sort of that larger, you're looking for Argosy. Argosy Tours they run most of those boat tours out of either downtown or on Lake Union because you can do one or the other. There's different itineraries you can do depending upon what you want to see. If you want to see the houseboats on Lake Union, you'll want to sail on Lake Union. If you want to see, sort of the downtown Seattle skyline, you'll want to go out of downtown. So it depends on, what you want to do.
And then on the north end of that lake, there's a couple of fun things happening. One is there's a small neighborhood. Seattle is a town of neighborhoods. So we talked about Belltown in the downtown area. Lower Queen Anne is another neighborhood. There's a huge hill to the north of downtown called Queen Anne Hill, which is a very expensive and nice neighborhood. Lots of great stuff happening on the top of the hill if you are up for the strenuous hike to get to the top of the hill or you have a car. And then as you come down the other side, you start to hit two neighborhoods that are really popular spots for people to live, which are Fremont, which is a very bohemian neighborhood, has record shops and coffee shops, and just it's an eclectic neighborhood. They have farmers markets in all of these neighborhoods, by the way, if you happen to be here over a weekend. And then if you go a little further out, you hit Ballard, which is the Norwegian neighborhood that was sort of settled by Norwegians in the area. It's where they have all the fishing boats, the crab boats that go up to Alaska. If you remember the Deadliest Catch, there's a set of locks out there to get people from the lake
Yeah,
and
those
into the
locks
Puget
look
Sound.
super interesting.
Yeah, the Ballard
Yeah.
locks are
Yes.
a great thing to, if you're really interested in like salmon ladders and stuff like that. It's actually really cool to go and watch, especially on a nice day, sit and watch the locks open and close.
In those neighborhoods, tons of restaurants, very eclectic restaurants. These aren't like chain restaurants. Tons of music and bars is really popular in those neighborhoods if you're here like adults only and want to catch some live music. And then if you come back in toward the lake, on the north end of the lake, there's a park called Gasworks Park, which is huge with locals. So when the sun is out, that park is just filled with people. It sits right on what we call the Burke-Gilman Trail. It's a major biking path that goes kind of all over. The city is very bikeable, very walkable outside of downtown.
It was also in a movie.
Yes, it was in 10 Things I Hate About You.
Yeah,
yes,
so with the paintball scene where they're throwing, there is no paintball course.
There's no balloon paintball at Gasworks Park, but that was the park that they were at. Yes, and the lake that they were on, and the little 2-person paddle wheeler was Lake Union. So, if you head then inland from Lake Union, you get to the University District, which is home to the University of Washington.
Go Huskies.
Go Huskies. They do a lot of rowing over there. You can catch, if you're into rowing, you can catch them doing rowing practice when school's in session through what they call the Lake Washington Cut, which is connects Lake Union over to Lake Washington, which is a much bigger body of water. But if you head over to the University District, you can, Ashley, I think you said in your pre-show notes, you can relive your 90s college days because University District has not changed in the same way that some other parts of the city have. So lots of great old record stores, cheap eats, bookstores, coffee shops, all that sort of stuff. And the University of Washington
campus.
University of Washington campus is second to none to walk around, especially if you happen to be here for whatever reason during the cherry blossom season. They have tons of cherry blossoms on their campus to walk around and see. So those are great spots. Last neighborhood I'll just hit on really fast is Capitol Hill.
I was wondering, are you going to talk about Capitol Hill?
Go for Capitol Hill, Sam.
Okay, Capitol Hill is actually, so the first neighborhood we moved to when we first lived in Seattle is Capitol Hill. It's a super hip neighborhood. It is known for
being... We were hip. We were with it then.
We were not that hip. We lived in Capitol Hill and we lived in Fremont, which is the bohemian neighborhood that Brian was describing not too long. So we were once upon a time kind of hip, not anymore. But yeah, Capitol Hill is Capitol Hill is super fun. There's a ton of, I would say Capitol Hill is most well known for its bars and restaurants, and it is also known for being the gayest neighborhood in Seattle. I'm just going to say it that way. Like it is super LGBTQ friendly. Tons of like bars and restaurants that have, very LGBTQ friendly flags outside. It's a really fun neighborhood. Lots of great like little shops, and it's just a fun place to walk around. And the food and the bars are, I would say, bar none, the best probably in Seattle.
Yeah. So Josh, I think if you only had a single day pre-cruise in Seattle, you've flown out too late. You should be here at least a day for transit up to Vancouver just in case. But B, I'd go back to the beginning of the show and just say like the places you have to hit are Pike Place Market and the waterfront, and then if you have time, I would head over to Seattle Center for the Space Needle. Those are all walkable and together, and it doesn't.
And you
take
could
a
do that
day.
In a day and a half, right? These other things that we're talking about as we get into the show more and more are further out of the downtown corridor, even though they're not far. They're maybe 10 minutes away or whatnot, but you might have to take a bus or an Uber to get. And thank you, Drew, Save Our Sonics.
Yeah,
absolutely.
from your lips to God's ears, my friend, because I would love an NBA team back in this town.
I do want to bring up Matthew's comment about Leavenworth, about an old Bavarian style area. It is great, but it's several hours away.
Hike.
So this is not, if you have a trip to Seattle and you're coming for 2 or 3 days, you're not going to Leavenworth. Leavenworth is a wonderful town.
And the best time to visit Leavenworth is actually in the winter time because they do a big Christmas festival out there. And so you're not going to be out here for that. And then I would say it's not only 3 hours away, it's like 3 hours of like winding mountain roads to get out to Leavenworth. So if there's an accident or you hit traffic, like you're going to be stuck for a while. So good. It is a good place to go visit. We've been there, but I'd say that's like you're coming to Seattle for a week or 2 weeks or something like that. It's much more of a destination for people who live out here than anything else. So yeah.
You forgot the one thing that was on my husband's to-do list when we just had a day, and that was the original REI, multi-story REI store, where you can test out the kayaks and the mountain bikes and all of that. So yes, very important.
The original REI is not to be missed. That is for sure.
I love that answer, but that's for the people who want to buy stuff at REI. I feel like not everybody is like.
If you have a member dividend, we can take care of it for you. So yes. All right, let's talk about actually one other thing. CT here is asking about the value of the city pass. I mean, I don't think it's any different than any other city pass in any other city, right? I mean, it is, if you're going to use it, if you're going to actually get to all the stops in it, it probably more than pays for itself. But if you're just going to hit a couple things, Seattle's so walkable. It's so short distance between things, and most of this stuff doesn't require an experienced guide to really, see it. So like, I think you'd be okay. And there's not a lot of like, a hop on, hop off bus kind of stuff. Seattle's not a city with a ton of like, those sites spread out everywhere. It's like Pike Place Market.
Although you can ride the duck boats if you really want to.
Please don't ride the duck boats.
They're really annoying.
Well,
and
somebody got killed on one here. Remember that?
Well, yes,
yeah.
There was a big accident years ago. So it's.
I will say downtown, if there's something, if you're already downtown and you're looking to go see something, the downtown library is actually kind of an interesting building. It was built by. It's not a Gaudi building, but it was built by a famous architect whose name is escaping me at the moment. But it's a really cool building with all this glass cantilever and everything. So yeah. All right, Sam, let's get in the car. Let's get in the car. Let's get out of town. Let's get to some things that are not walkable. You got to have a car to get to them, but they're well worth the time. Yes. I want to start with CT was asking about Museum of Flight.
Yes. That's a fantastic museum.
So CT, we talked about Mohi just a second ago on the south end of Lake Union. Museum of Flight, another place I literally used to spend like every other weekend at the Museum of Flight with Nathan because Microsoft employees got this insane discount to go there. So it was like $5 and he was free or something. So we would just go in and he'd just have a great old time. It is, in my opinion, is well worth the trip. It is at Boeing Field, BFI Field, which is in the heart of downtown, and not in the heart.
Well, south of downtown.
South of downtown. It's
like
where
a
the
15-minute drive.
Yeah,
downtown.
It's one of Boeing's facilities where they would fly planes in and out for repair. It's also a private airport now, and they've got an amazing collection of airplanes over there, an old Air Force One and a Concorde.
And if the president comes to Seattle, that's actually where they fly into. They don't fly into SeaTac. They fly into Boeing.
I
Field.
highly, highly recommend the Museum of Flight. I think it is a great thing if you've got a car and if you've done some of these other sites to head down there and see it. And I will see your Museum of Flight, CT, and raise you the Boeing Everett, what do you call it? Boeing Everett Factory has a tour. It's about 90 minutes or so outside of downtown to get up there north on I-5. But that is the factory.
I don't even think it's that far, Brian. I think it's probably more like an hour.
In traffic on a weekend, maybe. But once you get off the freeway, you got to drive a little bit west. But anyway, it's the where they actually manufactured the 747, the 777, I think it was, and you could see they have an assembly line. They have an actual moving assembly line to make the airplanes. It just is at a crawl speed. But they show you how the planes are made. They've got the original 747 parked out there. It is really worth a trip. We got to take a trip up there one time with a law firm I worked at, and it was well worth the experience. So that's another great one. Sam, I'm gonna get off of planes and throw it over to you. Like where would you head if you had a car?
I feel like we hit the places, Brian.
No hiking, no Mount Rainier, no.
I'm thinking.
I can take this one.
All right, Ashley, you go.
You have a few days, Brian.
Yeah, put your hand down in the back of the class, Sam. Ashley's got you covered. Hold her beer for a second.
You can either, if you want to go hiking, go see the mountain. Go to Mount Rainier. We did it as a day drive twice, and then I hear there's great cabins if you want to rent some cabins out there, but it's absolutely gorgeous. I love when it's in the middle of the summer and you're hot and you're hiking and then you end up on snow. You see these people that are all packed out coming from the summit. And so great day trip to go out there or an overnight. But my favorite, and this is if you're driving to Vancouver, it's on your way. See, I'm using my air quotes. It's on your way, the San Juan Islands. About halfway between Seattle and Vancouver. And it is just magic. It is the magical little collection of islands that you have to take a ferry. You board a ferry on your car, or you just park your car and do a day trip. And Friday Harbor or Orcas Island, the most amazing seafood. There's just gorgeous place to go walk around, see whales. You can go ahead and check whale watching off of your bucket list before going on your Alaska cruise. Just absolutely gorgeous. We've done it as a day trip and as a multi-night stopover. And you could easily do it as a stopping point on your way to or from your cruise.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, now
You can
I
also
thought
you
of
can also
something.
wait. Hold on. You can also take a float plane from South Lake Union
Yes,
to fly you
to
out to the
San
San
Juan.
Juans to
Yeah,
Friday
Or
Harbor.
drive
Yeah.
like I do.
or drive. Yeah. Well, so now that Beth actually helped me out with another idea outside of Seattle. So down in Tacoma, which is about 40 miles south of Seattle,
Yes.
there is a wonderful museum. It's the Museum of Glass, where you can go see glass exhibits and you can see artists actually creating glass art right there. You can there are some local places in Seattle that you can find that also you can see glass blowing, but the Museum of Glass has these huge,
Kilns. Yeah.
kilns that you can watch, and you can watch them firing their glass right there. So that's a pretty cool thing to do as well. It is, about a hour drive down to Tacoma to do. It's a really great place, and of course, Seattle is a very big glass blowing culture. It's the main, not just because of Chihuly, but there are many glass artists that sort of started their careers in the Seattle and Tacoma areas. So
It's fascinating to
fantastic
watch.
opportunities. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I want to segue us. We've got a little under 20 minutes left, which seems hardly fair for food. So
For food, I know.
I'm going to segue us to food because I know one of Sam's picks. I'm going to segue us to food by one last activity recommendation, which is if you're coming out here in the summer, check the schedule for the Sounders FC. Fantastic soccer club out here, football club, and
the Seattle Rain. Don't forget the Seattle Rain.
Seattle
the
Rain.
the female football club.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. But you can go catch a soccer game. It's a great thing to do. I actually know a friend of ours who's coming out here to do just that with his family before they head up to Alaska to cruise. And I love going to the soccer matches because it's like 90 minutes. It's not an all day kind of thing. So So all right. I know I went there, Sam, because just like a stone's throw away is the International District. So as we talk about food, Sam loves all the Asian food, all of it that she can get her hands on, and so like the International District is like her little playground of food experiences.
Let me just be clear. It's called the International District. It's formerly called Chinatown. So it was formerly Chinatown. The food culture, the Asian food culture in Seattle is vibrant and very diverse. It started primarily as Chinese immigrants and Japanese immigrants in Seattle, and so that's a ton of the restaurants are Chinese and Japanese. There's also there are several like Asian art museums in Seattle as well, which I unfortunately we haven't had a chance to talk about, but there's an amazing Asian art as well as the food. But the International District has everything. So there are other Asian restaurants outside of the International District. There's quite a few in Belltown as well. But I would tell you that if you're coming to Seattle, you can get great dim sum in the International District. You can get great sushi all throughout Seattle. You can get great Thai food, great Vietnamese food, great Laotian food. I mean, there's just every kind of Asian food you can imagine is here in Seattle.
And I think this would be a good time to highlight Drew's recommendation, a place that we took them to dinner.
Yes.
There's a great sort of Asian fusion restaurant here in town it's a sit-down dinner. I want to highlight for everyone. There is literally no place in Seattle except for like one restaurant of which I'm aware and like maybe like one dinner club that would require you to dress up at all. And
No.
Yeah, and the one restaurant is fabulous. We've eaten there. It's Canlis. I think who was it? CT was looking for a romantic spot. If you're looking for a romantic spot and you don't mind spending a little money, Canlis, gorgeous views up on a cliff, close to downtown, looks out on the lake. Fabulous food. Wonderful.
That's the one place that I would say if you're coming with kids, maybe don't go there. Not that they're not welcome there, but I would just say that's not like all the other restaurant recommendations we're giving are totally appropriate for adults only,
families and kids,
families, multi-generational.
But Wild Ginger, to come back to this, they've opened several locations in the Seattle area because they are insanely popular and the food is really, really good. I can't speak highly enough of the 7 flavor beef. What's the soup the 7 element
soup?
is
There's a theme here
fantastic.
with 7. I don't know
Green
why.
curry, they just have really, really good food. So
Their fragrant duck. It's like a
fragrant duck.
Peking duck, but it's served with those like kind of bao buns instead of the like wraps that normally Peking duck comes in. It's so freaking good. I can't even. Yeah. But I wanna put a plug in there for my favorite dim sum place called Harbor City, which is in the International District. I would go there for brunch, and it's gonna be one of those like traditional dim sum places. Fantastic food.
We're getting whatchamacallit soon from Vancouver. There's a restaurant in Vancouver that we
Sun
love
Sui
for dim
Wah.
sum that's
Yes.
coming down to the Seattle area called Sun Sui Wah. So,
But it's going to be on this side of town, so it's
that's
not going to
right,
be in downtown
yeah.
Seattle. So I'm not going to send people there because it's going to be too far off the beaten path for anyone who's visiting just Seattle proper. But there's
Ashley, where did you head for food? Like, what did you think was particularly good?
We ate our way around Pike Street Market. So that was one meal. And then Queen Anne Beer Hall. It had amazing burgers and great fun drinks as well. And
people
very
love that place.
Yeah, very family friendly. And it was right next to our hotel. Fantastic French fries. So I think my one food recommendation is just make sure that you get some seafood in and don't go to a chain place. Like, just enjoy the local delicious food.
And, and look, there are hole in the walls the wrong place. There are 10 restaurants on every block, and some of them are small. I love to go look at Eater and other sites to look for really good places that people are loving. We've got a couple of restaurateurs out here. Anything Tom Douglas is generally going to be a solid choice. Is it like the most inventive food you'll ever meet? No, but he is a huge restaurateur out here who has tons of specialty kind of restaurants and spots. They're all good. We haven't had a bad meal at a Tom Douglas restaurant.
Yeah.
We haven't had I wouldn't say we'd had the greatest meal. The other chef I would watch out for is Ethan Stoll, Stowell. He's got quite a few restaurants in the area and growing, and we have had some really amazing food out of Ethan Stoll's restaurants.
The other thing that I feel like we have to hit is, if you come to Seattle and if you eat fish, you must eat cedar plank salmon. You must you must have at least one meal that involves cedar plank salmon. That is like the thing in Seattle. You also, if you eat sushi, you also must eat sushi, because these are like two things that Seattle does better than like anyone in the world. And I don't know why, it's just how it is.
We should give, so we have a couple of strong recommendations. So if you were into like very inventive sushi rolls, there's a place in downtown called Umi's Sake House. Fabulous rolls, huge menu of sushi.
Yeah.
They also have some noodle dishes and things.
Yeah,
and
or
then
its sister restaurant, Momiji,
I wouldn't call it sister.
It's in South Lake Union, and it's its sister restaurant.
I don't know that it's a sister restaurant. I think one of the chefs walked off with half the recipes.
No, it's not. You're thinking Japanesa, Brian. So Japanesa is actually a chef who left Umi and started their own.
So Umi
and
Momiji and Japonesa are all great. If you want really, really traditional sushi, just take a peek at some recommendations. There's a new sushi restaurant that opened in Pike Place Market about a year ago now that has one of, if you've seen Netflix, Jiro Dreams of Sushi, one of his sous chefs came over here and opened that restaurant. And so you're talking about, it's all omakase sushi, meaning the chef just serves you whatever he wants to serve you. And
I'm not eating there, and Ashley's not eating there, because if you have any kind of food preferences or food allergies, it's not a good place for you.
But there's a lot of those places.
We'll go to the cheese and wine place, Sam.
We'll go get some Beecher's mac and cheese. Absolutely.
I'm trying to remember the name of the place that we used to go to. It was Shiro's.
Yes.
Shiro's, which is also opened by a former Jiro Dreams of Sushi sous chef kind of person. They all serve much more what I call traditional sushi. So whereas Momiji and the others serve these like fantastic rolls with like multiple fishes and seared and sauces and drizzles and all this stuff, these are going to serve much more like standard sushi fare. They're all great. Highly recommend the sushi here in the Seattle area. So
if you're also interested in Vietnamese dumplings, like soup dumplings, jiao long bao, that's what they're called, soup dumplings. The best place, and they only have them in Washington and California, I believe, but it's actually very popular in Asia, is this, it's a chain technically. It's called Din Tai Fung, and there's one right in the heart of downtown at Pacific Place Mall, and it is fantastic.
And coming to downtown Disney
Coming
downtown
to
Disney at Disneyland.
Downtown Disneyland. Yeah. So, but it is a fantastic place for, you can eat brunch there, you can eat dinner there. It's the same food. It doesn't matter, but it's actually technically my favorite restaurant. So if you want to eat at my favorite restaurant.
If you are a steak eater, like we know Chris Braga is out there, and you're looking for a fabulous steak, skip Ruth's Chris, skip the Metropolitan Grill and head straight to skip
the Capitol Grill.
Skip the Capitol Grill and head straight to the Metropolitan Grill. That is the local Seattle steakhouse here. Again, if you're looking for a really nice dinner out, you don't have to get dressed up. I mean, something better than shorts is probably advisable for the Metropolitan Grill, but you don't need like a coat and tie. That is a great spot for a really good traditional steakhouse dinner here in the Seattle area. So food to avoid, we do not get the world's greatest Mexican food in the Seattle area proper.
Barbecue is a no.
Barbecue is a no.
There's some hole-in-the-wall joints, but you're going to have to go pretty far off the beaten path.
Yeah.
And so
you got to know where
to.
Yeah. You can't just go to any place. Yeah, there is not. We're not known for that. We're known for our fish. We're known for our seafood, or our sushi. We're known for our Asian food. And as Brian said, you can get a great burger. You can get, you can even find a lot of like alternative types of meats as well. That's definitely a big thing here in Seattle. There are some great, if you are vegetarian or vegan, like there are some great restaurants as well. They're not really mostly in downtown, but there are some great ones in the Seattle area. And if you do reach out, and we can try and point you in that direction. And
I'll say another tough meal for us in the Pacific Northwest is brunch, not because we don't have places that do good brunch, but because they're all like jam packed. And so
you don't have enough. Clearly,
we don't have enough. We don't have enough.
So you're going to wait a long time, or you need a reservation. That is the other thing that for dinners, I will say, for sit-down restaurants, reservations are key. So make those reservations, at least a couple weeks in advance.
I got to put in one more. I can't believe we forgot this. I got to put one more plug in, which is if you're into wine, welcome to the next wine capital of the United States. So like as the climate changes, people have been buying land in Oregon and Washington. Oregon makes some really great Pinot Noirs, and Washington makes some really good Cabernets. And so when you're up here and you're looking at a menu, I implore you to order a Washington Cab or an Oregon Pinot. If you want some recommendations, hit us up, dclduo@gmail.com. Yeah.
Get your two
bottles to take on the cruise.
There's some great wine. And if you're really into wine, if you do have a car and you can come over to the east side of town to an area called Woodinville, they have a bunch of these, like what I'll call storage shed wineries, where it's outposts of wine. Yeah. It's tasting rooms from wineries that are based in Eastern Washington. That you're not going to want to make the drive out to Yakima or Walla Walla or those sorts of places. And so they bring the wine over, and you can just go from tasting room to tasting room to tasting room. It's fantastic. You can organize a limo tour, one of those. And there are some actually fabulous restaurants over in the Woodinville area. So you can get some really good wine and then have some really good food, and then have them drive you back to your Seattle hotel.
And there's Woodinville whiskey if you're into whiskey. So you can go there
as a Kentucky native, I'm going to give thumbs down to Woodinville whiskey. I've had it. It's not great. Yeah. But I was going to say, if you're downtown and you're into wine, there's a restaurant that is popular with locals called Purple. Purple Wine Bar is what it's called, and they have some really good food and a huge wine list. It's a great place. It's very casual. It's a nice spot to go get dinner. Kids would be totally fine at Purple. So it's a really, really great spot. So
we've got to bring up. Jackie's got two comments that I think are really key.
Hold on. I got one more comment. I got to put up. Is this one of them?
Yes, that's one of them. Exactly. So Jackie must be a local, because her recommendations are clearly from a local. So Elenos is a Greek yogurt, but they make all of these like different flavored yogurts. They've got an outpost in Pike Place Market. You can get their yogurt there. You can even find it in some of our local supermarkets as well. But that, I would say,
this is not a health conscious yogurt. This borders on ice cream, and it is delicious. So
Yes. And then her other recommendation is Molly Moon's for some great ice cream. Molly Moon's is a local chain. We've got, they have, I think, 5 or 6 stores around the Seattle area, and they have fantastic ice cream. They have their everyday flavors, and then they have seasonal rotating flavors. Yeah. It is not a Baskin Robbins. You will not have a choice of like 40 flavors. You have a choice of like maybe 8 to 10 flavors.
Yeah, their flavors are more like they'll have a vanilla-ish, but they'll have like an Earl Grey tea.
It'll be called
ice
sweet
cream.
Yeah, their vanilla is called sweet cream ice cream.
My two favorites. My two favorites are Yeti, which is a vanilla ice cream with caramel swirl, and I forget what else is in it.
It's like oats
like
and
granola.
Stuff.
Yeah, like granola.
That's it.
And then they make a special flavor version of Yeti called Sasquatch. So Yeti is the white one and Sasquatch is the brown one. So that's a chocolate ice cream with all the filling from Yeti in it. And it's a really good place. Our son loves Molly Moon's ice cream.
And my favorite there is always their coffee flavored ice cream. It's fantastic. They also do great seasonal salted caramel as well. So
there you go. Jackie's saying she's
good.
a former local.
Jackie.
Yes, there you go.
Well, come back, Jackie, because clearly you're missing the food here in Seattle.
Yeah. All right, so we got to round us out. We got 5 minutes left. Let me just pause and say, are there any food recommendations that we really missed, Sam? I mean, there's just so much great food around this area.
There's so much great food. I mean, if folks are looking for something specific, feel free, as we said, to reach out to us either on Facebook or via email. However, makes sense. And we are happy to give you more specific recommendations if there's a particular kind of food you're looking for. Or as I said, if you're looking for vegetarian or vegan options, there are, tons of stuff available. It's just not as easily accessible to the downtown corridor, which is where we're kind of focusing our discussion today.
So we got to round out the show with a little bit of planes, trains, and automobiles here. So you've come to Seattle. You've had a fabulous time. You're Jones and Eat on that Disney cruise though up in Vancouver. How are you going to get there? You've actually got. We pre-show we were saying, well, you've got a bunch of options. Let me just put it out there. One that we've not really tried, and I can't give you a firm recommendation around, is like a bus. But there are buses that run between, and I'm not talking about like Greyhound. There are like East Coast style Bolt buses that just go from Seattle up to Vancouver, and that's what they do. Just encourage you to research those. If you've got a lot of luggage with you, it may be a little bit harder to deal with. Not my preferred method to get you from Seattle to Vancouver and the comfort you deserve before a Disney cruise.
But Brian, let's ask Ashley what way she
how
and
did
her
you get up
group
there?
got up to Vancouver.
Yes. Well, we had a rental car because we wanted to make sure that we could get around on our own. And so, we had the rental car. And I'll say that crossing into Canada, it looks like you're in the Canada Pavilion at Epcot. Like it's just a bigger version of all the beautiful flowers. And it is a gorgeous crossing. You're going to sit in the car for a while, so make sure you have some snacks. But that was just absolutely lovely. And then our friends took the train. They took the Amtrak Cascades line. And it was very easy. They could wield their own luggage, and then just took a cab or Uber once they got to Vancouver. But that was a great way to do it because you could see the beautiful, just gorgeous scenery. I will say, though, that you'll want to check the times because I think there was a big delay between when they got off the boat in Vancouver and then when the next train back down to Seattle was. Yeah. And then especially if you're trying to get over to the airport.
There can also be a big delay. So out here on the West Coast, the Amtrak trains share the railway with the freight traffic, and so they will be
and
forced
freight has priority.
Yeah, they will be forced to pull off to let freight go by. So a lot of times your train can get delayed between Seattle and Vancouver just for freight traffic.
But if you have a whole day, you'll be fine.
Yeah, no, you'll be fine. Yeah,
exactly.
just don't white knuckle the like leave the morning of on a mid afternoon train expecting like that. That's not going to help. That's not going to work for you. On the car side of things, one thing I wanted to mention is make sure if you're renting a car and you intend to take it into Canada that the rental car company will let you, because there are some companies that don't allow their cars to cross the border. And if they do cross the border, the company gets an alert and reports the car stolen. And then you can have a really fun experience coming back into the United States from Canada. So just double check that you can take the car outside of the U.S. And I would say also border crossing, Ashley, to your point, sometimes you just breeze right through. Sometimes you're going to wait in line. On the way up to the border, there will be sort of tote signs that are giving you different border crossing points and the times, so you can peel off the main highway and go to a lesser used border crossing. It may take you a little bit out of the way and you'll have to navigate back, but I would say just pay attention to those times. On the way back, leave plenty of time to get back into the United States. The U.S. side of the border is usually much more backed up than the Canadian side to get in.
Do not fly out same day if you're driving back down to SeaTac.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So just watch out. Just watch out for that.
Yeah. So to be clear, so we have a question from Matthew. How far of a drive is it in between? From the city of Seattle to the city of Vancouver, it's about a 3-hour drive. Of course, if you have built-in stops and then border crossing, you're talking about additional time. So that's I'm not counting stops, and I'm not counting the border crossing, because the border crossing is super variable. As Brian mentioned, you can, I would say in general, it is a short wait to get across from the U.S. to Canada, and it is a long wait in general from Canada to the U.S. So you might be waiting in that border crossing to come back to the U.S. for an hour sitting in the car, right, in traffic. So that is something that is not an unusual wait time when you're coming back across from
and traffic
from
on both
Canada.
sides in the cities too. There's
Exactly.
traffic in the cities. Yeah.
Exactly. So and then SeaTac is another 30-minute drive south of Seattle. So if you're going straight to SeaTac, you've got to build that into, and that also varies by traffic.
That can be wildly variable.
Yes.
I-5 through Seattle narrows significantly down to from 5 lanes down to 2 through lanes, and
in the tunnel.
Yeah, it can get very backed up. So just plan a lot of extra time to get to the airport, because if it's a weekend, if it's a summer weekend and people have been out, it can back up really quickly. 2 other just sort of pro tips I want to give. Just remember, when you cross into Canada, you're in kilometers, not miles per hour. So just use that other dial on the speedometer. So
and the gas is in liters too, by the way.
Yeah, I don't buy gas in Canada. Oh my God, I don't know what's going on. And then the other thing I was going to say is, if you happen to live in a state that borders Canada, there is a special program that you can sign up for called Nexus. You can sign up for it. You can go, you have to do an interview in person. You get a Nexus card, but it's essentially like Trusted Traveler. So you get all the benefits of global entry and the TSA pre-check and all of that sort of stuff.
Fast
you get
crossing.
A special card to enter and exit Canada more quickly.
But everyone in your car has to have that.
Everyone
pass.
has to have it.
So if you've got one person in your car that doesn't have it, you can't go in the Nexus lane. You have to go in the regular lane. Yeah. So it's something actually available to folks who live on border states to Mexico as well. So if you live on a border state,
it's not called Nexus.
It's not called Nexus. It has a it has a different name. It's a different program. But it is really actually quite nice for those of us who live in Washington, in those who live in New York, those who live in Minnesota, to get that quick crossing between the U.S. and Canada.
Last thing I want to say is we've talked about trains, we've talked about automobiles, we've talked about buses. I don't want to discount. You can take a short hop flight between either SeaTac in Vancouver or Everett, which is north of Seattle and has a lovely small airport that is a dream to go through. It's like an executive airport with coffee shop vibes. That they'll have a short hopper flight from Everett up to Vancouver, so you can take a plane to get up there.
Is there a ferry?
There is a way to take a ferry.
Not to Vancouver, the city, though. You could take it to Victoria, and then you would have to then get to Vancouver. Okay. So Victoria is on Vancouver Island, but not in the city of Vancouver. That's very confusing for people. They're not the same place. Let me just be clear. So you can't really take a ferry directly to Vancouver.
There's also If you're in Seattle and you're wanting to check out Victoria, because sometimes the cruises stop in Victoria, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they stop late at night for an hour as a technical stop, and then they go back to Vancouver. If you're wanting to check out Victoria, which is a fabulous city in and of its own, Bouchard Gardens is up there. The Empress Hotel is up there that does a fabulous afternoon tea. It's right on a bay. It's gorgeous. There's a jet boat that leaves from downtown Seattle and will take you up to Victoria, and I think about 90 minutes, maybe 2 hours.
Yeah, it's called the Victoria Clipper.
Yeah, and so you can.
There are a lot of people who get seasick on it, though. Just a fair
it's
warning.
moving fast. It's a jet boat, so you can haul up to Victoria, do Victoria for a day, turn around, and come back to Seattle on the jet boat. But that is also an option. So, all right, I think we have covered all the ways short of private helicopter or Learjet to get you to Vancouver. I think we covered food, things to do, places to stay, why you would even want to visit the Emerald City before your cruise. Have I missed anything, Sam, before we wrap up the show?
I don't believe so. Beth is asking, what about Ivers? We mentioned Ivers towards the beginning of the show. It's on the waterfront. It's next door to Elliott's, both of which are great for your New England style clam chowder or your fish and chips. Those are also things that are quite popular in Seattle, even though obviously they're New England style clam chowder. So
Yeah,
I ate a lot of fish and chips.
Yeah, fish and chips are great. So
no Manhattan style clam chowder.
No, there's not. That's not the style of chowder we eat here in Seattle. We eat New England style.
Yeah. All right, so I wanted to let's wrap up here. First, I just want to let folks know we will be back this week, Thursday. Sam is feeling well enough, so we're going to do the live Royal Caribbean download for all of you out there, our trip report from the Oasis of the Seas, Thursday night, 4:30 p.m. Pacific, 7:30 p.m. Eastern. We will keep that show to an hour. It's going to be jam-packed because we got to get our son out of an activity that he has later that evening.
Yeah.
And then I was just going to... Oh, go ahead, Sam.
I was going to say, for those who are wondering, Ashley's shirt is for our DCL Duo inaugural podcast cruise. That's the logo for the podcast cruise. And so the shirt is available on TeePublic if you're interested, but it is specifically for the inaugural podcast cruise. So for those who are curious about that.
So we will be back.
Point, here we come.
Yep, that's right.
All right, so we will be back on Thursday with a live show. We are taking a brief break on live shows the week following, and so the next live regular Monday show will be on May 6th, I believe it is. We're going to be talking MSC Cruise Lines with the incomparable Seth Kabursky, who recently took a cruise on MSC. You might know Seth from our Universal Orlando shows that we've done with him. He writes for Touring Plans and the Unofficial Guides, and so he took an MSC cruise, and we wanted to have him on because we've had almost no one come talk to us about MSC cruising.
So this Thursday will be on at 4:30 Pacific, 7:30 Eastern. And then you'll see us in 2 weeks from today, Monday, May 6th, at our normal time, 5:30 Pacific, 8:30 Eastern.
And with that, I just want to tell our listeners, I hope you enjoyed the show, and I want to thank Ashley for taking time out of her day to come on and share her fabulous experience and recommendations from Seattle. Hope they've been helpful. As we've said throughout the show, just email us with any questions, dclduo@gmail.com, and we will get back to you with some of our recommendations. We also have some fabulous recommendations for Vancouver. You can check in our back catalog for some of those, and we may do another live show in the future about Vancouver, maybe after we actually get a chance to get back up there post-pandemic for the first time. So yes, but Ashley, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having
really
me, y'all.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
All right.
Have a great evening.
Thank you. Have a good evening, everyone.